Bob Huggins, pictured here, is the winningest coach in the history of University of Cincinnati athletics. And Bob Huggins, still pictured here, was forced to resign from the very same University of Cincinnati. Seems odd.
This video is presented by Acura ADX, crafted for more.
Let's first get into who Bob Huggins was at the University of Cincinnati. He was hired in 1989. Cincinnati was a very bad basketball program at that point in time. I'm talking no tournament in more than a decade. I'm talking losing season after losing season after losing season. I'm talking empty arenas. Huggins was hired to bring about a new era, a better era where it felt good to wake up in the morning and say, I'm a Cincinnati fan, and then also say, and there's a game tonight I will pay money to go to. No easy task. But he won the community over in his very first game. Huggins was jumping up and down, he got a tech sticking up for his guys, and the Bearcats beat a ranked team at the buzzer. Sounds kind of fun to watch. In his third year, the Bearcats made it to the Final Four. This was a program that hadn't been that deep in the tournament for nearly 30 years. In other words, they hadn't been to the tournament in the amount of time it takes for a person to go from birth to childhood to adulthood to the first time in adulthood where you look in the mirror and say, oof, I'm getting old. That's how I like to measure time. It's good for my self-hatred. It took Huggins 3 years to turn the program from a non-entity to a nationally recognized basketball school. Pretty impressive. Especially when you consider that it wasn't easy to recruit in Cincinnati. The years of losing, the urban campus, having to compete with other bigger Ohio schools all worked against Bob Huggins. He ended up heavily recruiting from junior colleges. There were 8 JUCO players on that 92 Final Four team, including future NBA All-Star Nick Van Exel. Huggins got a little criticism for the JUCO recruiting. It's not great long-term planning, but what the hell, he got results. The year 2000 was Huggins' best year ever, until National Player of the Year Kenyon Martin broke his leg in the conference tournament. Pretty big bummer. But hey, at least after the summer's NBA draft, Cincinnati could boast a #1 overall draft pick. And for the first time ever, they could boast 2 of their players going in the first round. And you may have noticed that UC had a lot to be proud of, and I haven't been talking about any beef for some time now. Well, let me introduce you to this lady, Nancy Zimpher, who became president of the University of Cincinnati in the spring of '04. And she came in with an agenda. She wanted to raise the reputation of UC, upping academic standing with a focus on producing responsible and ethical students. That's nice. What was UC's reputation at this point in time? Well, basketball titan, of course. They weren't Harvard, sure, but they weren't no scrubs either. And also, Thug U was a nickname, in large part because of some things I neglected to tell you about the basketball program under Bob Huggins. Player graduation rate could have been better, but Huggins argued those numbers weren't fair because at the time the NCAA didn't include junior college kids or students who came back after 5 years to complete their degree, and UC had a program to encourage people to do just that. Plus, what about the guys who went on to play in the NBA or overseas? Athlete graduation rates shouldn't make or break a school's reputation, so what gives? Okay, let me tell you about the other thing I left out. For one reason or another, Bob Huggins' players and former players kept getting arrested. Sometimes for funny reasons, like stealing condoms. Just let them have them, it's for the greater good. And, actually, that's the only funny one. The other reasons were various types of fucked up. Alleged assault, alleged domestic violence, alleged drunk driving. One basketball player allegedly punched a police horse while drunk. I'm saying allegedly a lot, I know, but a fair amount of these charges ended up dropped. I don't want to be sued, and also I don't want to be on anyone's bad side because, for example, one student athlete was accused of kidnapping and torturing his roommate who may or may not have stolen money from him. Horrific, fucked up shit. And, not the best stuff for a university's reputation. So was the new president gonna go after the basketball program? Well, let's just say as Bob Huggins watched his new boss's boss climb a pyramid of male cheerleaders to celebrate his accomplishments, he probably wasn't too worried. Then, shortly after the '04 season, this happened. And it's kind of even worse than it sounds. Huggins failed the field sobriety test miserably. He couldn't recite the alphabet, there was vomit on the driver's side door, one report said he vomited on the arresting officer, and there was dash cam footage of it all. He could barely keep his balance during the field sobriety test. News of his DUI broke, in other words, that video hit the internet, on new President Nancy Zimpher's first commencement day. Coretta Scott King was speaking. Zimpher was not pleased. But the university didn't come down that hard on Huggins. Suspended with pay for the summer, and back in time for the season. In December, Zimpher sent him a letter being like, "Wow, good job, go Bearcats." I'm paraphrasing, of course. We've seen it before in college sports. Winning coaches have a wide berth to do exactly as they please. And while Zimpher talked a big game, she didn't end up seeming like she would stand up to a winning... Oh, what's this? After the 2005 season, Zimpher sent Huggins a letter with two options. Take a $1.4 million buyout now, or stay on for 2 more lame duck years to finish his contract, and then get out. What followed was called a civil war between Zimpher and Huggins. Or, as I like to call it, beef. Huggins chose to be a lame duck and stay for 2 more years. But he didn't say it like that, and he didn't say it privately to the university either. He held a press conference to essentially say, "Look how they're trying to massacre your beautiful boy." Again, I'm paraphrasing. The university saw going public as a low move, a breach of trust. The public saw it as Huggins sticking up for himself while under attack. Zimpher took the opposite approach from Huggins. She was silent in the press, going so far as to put an arm around a reporter's shoulders and firmly guide her out of her office. Zimpher was maligned in the press, and whenever she appeared in public to do other university president stuff, she was just nailed with Bob Huggins' questions and accusations, from an alumni association breakfast to an ice cream social with max 50 students. As you'd expect, she was booed at a pep rally celebrating the Bearcats entering the Big East. Now, you might not have expected that she was booed so much she cut her remarks short. Meanwhile, Huggins was receiving a lot of love. Local bookstores sold "I Support Huggins" t-shirts. Alums were calling Zimpher and the UC board to de-pledge donations. And boy band Hunk and Cincinnati native Nick Lachey wrote in to support the coach. Now, you might be wondering, why does everyone love a drunk driver and hate the lady who wants to better a school? Because basketball is and has been good for the school, in terms of community pride and also bringing in money. And look, if she wanted to fire him for drunk driving, she should have done that when it happened instead of pretending to be his friend for a year. Not necessarily the most convincing arguments to me, but I didn't grow up watching Bob Huggins bring pride to the school and the city. In the months that followed, increasingly aggressive letters went back and forth between Zimpher and Huggins' legal teams. Basically, the coach's lawyer kept asking for a contract extension. Huggins was finding it impossible to recruit without one. And the university president's lawyer kept saying no for 3 main reasons. 1, Huggins' DUI, which is very bad, no way around that, even if it was a year old. Second reason was his graduation rates, because, as Zimpher's representation argued, ignoring the NCAA stats and using the data Huggins' own lawyer provided, the numbers still looked bad. Now, it was possible the university was still disregarding NBA and overseas professionals when they damned Huggins for low graduation rates. And it's also possible they were ignoring another of the coach's lawyer's points. A lot of successful people don't have degrees. Bill Gates, anyone? And the third reason for not extending him, the 21 players over 16 years who had had run-ins with the law. In short, the university concluded that Huggins recruits and/or fails to foster players who will become good citizens / good representations of the new and improved university. And he isn't one himself. Huggins was pretty pissed. And it does seem like UC was painting with a broad brush, letting the worst actors define the group. Huggins claimed Zimpher said a degree from UC would be worth more once he was gone. His lawyer accused the school of talking out of both sides of its mouth. See, the letters got pretty aggressive. The administration was not swayed, and on August 23, 2005, Bob Huggins was given 24 hours to quit or be fired. He chose to quit. Zimpher was declared the winner of the Civil War and stood proudly by her convictions. But did she win the beef? Locally, Zimpher wasn't the most popular figure. But outside of Cincy, she was praised for standing up to a winning coach. The basketball program suffered. There were no longer any celebratory human pyramids for Zimpher to climb. But she did end up raising UC to a Tier 1 U.S. News & World Report school. So, kind of 50-50 on if she won the beef or not. Bob Huggins certainly did not win the beef. Pushed out of his job and all. He found another job, first at Kansas State, then he spent over a decade coaching at his alma mater, even making it back to the Final Four in 2010. In 2023, he retired after using a homophobic slur on air and another drunk driving incident. He didn't actually retire? He's not doing well, I wouldn't say. He didn't get his job back. But maybe in this dark hour, he'd saved a few newspaper clips to remind him of the good, impressive, inspiring, meaningful work he did at the University of Cincinnati. That might cheer him up. Thanks to our patrons, thanks to everyone for watching. Watch more stuff, consider joining the Patreon, subscribing to the YouTube channel, get a snack, and make it a chocolatey one. That's what we all want, come on, why not? For Secret Base, I'm Clara Morris. Good night and good game.